everybody, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the full face of Hourglass makeup. We're gonna try everything on. We're gonna talk about whether or not certain things are really worth that high price tag. A couple of things I really associate with Hourglass is a pretty high price and also a lot of coverage with the face products. I brought this idea up in my last video and many of you were interested in seeing it, and I was just kind of realizing that I have quite a few Hourglass products. So I thought, hey, let's put it all together and really, analyze it. So we're gonna start things off now that I've got my sunscreen and my moisturizer already on. We're gonna use the Veil Mineral Primer. This is an oil-free primer and it has SPF 15. And a lot of people talk about really enjoying this primer for its effect on staying power. And I've always thought, okay, well maybe that's just an oily skin person's type of product, It feels really silky smooth on my skin and definitely feels like it's evening out the texture. I gotta say, I look at my skin after I've put it on and I think everything does look kind of nice somehow just with this. But in terms of staying power, and when we're talking about this Vanish liquid foundation, which is very full coverage, very little goes a long way, you should not overdo this stuff. I do have a full review actually already on this product. But for me, with my normal to dry skin, I don't really see a huge difference when I use this with this foundation or when I don't. So I'm not saying it's not a worthwhile product, but it's just not turning out to be a necessity for me. Now talking about foundation, there's Vanish foundation in a couple of formats. They've got the stick and then the liquid. I really do like the stick. This shade called Nude for me is kind of yellowish. I mean, I still really like the coverage. I like the texture of the product. I think it's very easy to apply and I think it's easier to apply than this. This is just a little more touchy because literally half a pump is all anyone should be using. I've mistakenly used a full pump at times and it just comes off as way too much. So half a pump and I apply it with the brush that's supposed to be used with it. Although any kind of dense brush, I mean like the Real Techniques RT Go brush, different ones from Sigma, you don't have to use that certain brush, but I am going to very carefully pump myself out. Half a pump, and it's not like a watery foundation, but it is relatively thin. And I'm just going to dot it around on my skin. And you'll find that even for that half pump, you really are getting around the face, but I'm catering to those areas where I know I need the most coverage. That's where I place the dots first, and then I'll just take this and get it all blended in. And you can see, I mean, this is one of the fullest coverage foundations that I own. It really makes the skin look even and kind of velvety. Like I come away looking matte, but it's not a real heavy look, if that makes sense. So here's what we've got after blending that in. I mean, it's nearly concealer optional skin. It's extremely full coverage with a very small amount of product. As you can see, if I kind of turn my head, can you see how, I don't know, there's a little bit of light catching ability to it. There's just a little give to it, if you know what I mean. So now that we've got that going, we're gonna use the Vanish concealer, and I have this in the shade Silk. It seems to be a really good shade match for me, and I would say this is a concealer where a little bit does also go a long way, but yet it's a different consistency from the foundation. There's not sort of that rule associated with this like there is that half pump of the foundation. But as you can see, I'm catering to my areas where I'm the darkest. I'm going to go back with the foundation brush and just dab over some of these larger surface area spots. The coverage just went from full to extreme, I guess I'd call it now. I have a little brush that is also kind of like a downsized version of the foundation brush for concealer. And I can take it in to the little cavern area here. I mean, it's just incredibly full coverage. That concealer can pretty much handle anything, but keep in mind, we put it on top of a foundation that was already doing a lot. So the end result here is going to be just pretty major. Most definitely coverage galore. I feel like these products are really nice, but if you're watching this and you're like, there's no way I'm gonna pay that price tag for them, I'm thinking grab some Maybelline Superstay foundation, maybe grab some e.l.f. Camo Concealer, and you could turn out a very, very similar coverage level to this. Now I've got a mini size here of this Veil Translucent Setting Powder. I really do like this powder. This is kind of up there for me right now with like the Laura Mercier and all that stuff. It seems to be like maybe even finer in terms of its milling. Just the particles are very, very fine. And I'm just using my e.l.f. small tapered brush to take this over the areas I concealed. I'm gonna dab it right over my T-zone. I use a very small amount of powder just tapped into the cap. Did I say that this isn't the full size? This is just the mini. And it's not like you need a lot of extra mattifying for this look, but I just kind of wanted to reference this. This is something that I've definitely picked up and incorporated into other looks, topping off other concealers, and it has worked really well. It doesn't take away all your radiance. Again, I'm using a very small amount, but you do feel like you've totally set things. So I like that powder a lot. And now this bronzer. I was kind of raving on this bronzer in my products that surprised me video. This is Diffused Bronze Light, and this was just randomly sent to me in a PR box, and I just thought, you know, how is this gonna work? When you swatch this, it really does not look like too much of anything, but on the skin, and this time instead of seeing it over a contour stick, you'll get to see what it does just purely on its own. Like, it's a really nice bronzer shade. Like, it has a little sheen that comes with it in there. Just a very gentle kind of luminosity, but look how it's actually capable of giving me just the most perfect looking definition there in the cheekbone area. I wouldn't have ever thought it would be deep enough to do that, but it is. And it looks so like soft focus and pretty. So to me, that is just a gorgeous contour, a gorgeous bronzer. I'll give myself maybe just a hint there on the sides of the nose. And you feel like you've just got this flawless canvas to work on after that foundation and concealer. But I mean, this is a really great bronzer. If you're my skin tone, I mean, it's just enjoyable to put on. Next up, I'm going to use my single blush. This was another newish thing that was sent to me in the shade Luminous Flush. This is a really pretty blush. I don't find it to be quite so unique. Like, it's the sort of thing I feel like you could come up with elsewhere. You know, it's a really pretty shade, but this kind of medium pink, warm pink is not super unique. It's ultimately one of those things I'm going to come away thinking, yeah, I like it, but I wouldn't have to get that from Hourglass to get the look. But as you can see, it's got that swirl, like many of these do. It's got the pink shade that's kind of warm, a little bit bright, and then some kind of golden sheen swirled in there. Now, as far as highlights go from this brand, the only one I really have is in my Unlocked palette, and it's this shade right down here. This is the Metallic Strobe Powder. It says Champagne Strobe Light. They have a lot of different ambient lighting powders. The one individual one that I do have of that is the one called Diffused Light, just to put a little bit of this on. These are kind of hard to explain. They're really not highlighters, but they do kind of alter the way light hits the skin a little bit. They can be kind of brightening. Here I'm just putting it kind of right on the top of the cheek. Can you see a little bit of difference? To me, the ambient lighting powders have never been something that I was like, oh man, jumping up and down about, must-have product. But when they're included in a palette like this, I do kind of see their use because I can use them almost like a setting powder. But on their own, they're not really something I find myself seeking out to use in my makeup routine a whole lot. But if you think I should be, if you've got some special uses for those, let me know in the comments. But I'm going to go ahead and use this highlight just a little bit right up in here. We can definitely use a little glow on the skin now. We are very, very matte, but we can now pinpoint some areas where we want a little sheen. So I'm just getting the tiniest amount up there on the forehead area as well. And then we're going to take this. This is the Veil Soft Focus Setting Spray. It says shake well and hold 10 inches from face. This is a setting spray where I feel like the mist comes out very softly, and I actually have to hold it closer than pretty much anything else to actually feel the mist hitting my face. If I hold it out here, It's kind of like it all just kind of moves along before it ever gets to my skin. So I kind of have to do multiple mists and get it kind of close actually. So if I don't get all up in there, it's not even touching my face. Sometimes I get, oddly, a few larger looking droplets on my face, which you wouldn't expect because it is so fine and kind of cloud-like. For me personally, this is kind of like the primer in that they may be nice products, but it's a non-essential step for me because I feel like I will still have good staying power with that foundation whether I use this or not. I've used it on other things too. I don't feel like it immediately makes things soft focus. It doesn't really make me look very dewy at all either. It's just kind of there. It doesn't have a very big effect visually one way or the other. I'm going to use this Arch Brow Micro Sculpting Pencil in the shade Dark Brunette. It has the spoolie on one end, and then on the other end it has a very fine oval shape. Wasn't that what M Cosmetics was kind of doing with theirs as well, or am I mistaken? I might need to go check myself on that. But it's a fine brow pencil. It definitely does the job as well as, you know, a brow wiz. But that being said, I say it anytime we're really talking about fine brow pencils. I could get by with this kind of product from a drugstore brand for sure. The little oval shape really is not making much difference for me one way or the other. I'm not like, oh my gosh, this really changed the game. This feels so different. Not really. I think they may be just trying to set themselves apart in some way by changing their shape a little bit, but it's still just a very fine pencil. Texture-wise, you know, it's not too soft. It's not too dry either. It is showing up with ease, and the tone of the brown is good for me. And then I'm going to use the Arch Brow Volumizing Fiber Gel in the shade Dark Brunette. This is kind of an interesting little brush here because we have some longer lengths and some shorter lengths in there as well. The longer part is kind of nice if all you want is a light, like just gentle setting of the brow, you know what I mean? But then you go in with the shorter side and you get more of an application of product. You just get that feeling like, okay, more is going on the brows right now. To me, it's not precise enough of a brush to just handle my fill-in all on its own, but I think it's kind of a nice innovation for people who are just looking to set their brows, and some may want more products, some may want less. You can very easily get that with either side, and it doesn't feel overly goopy even on the short side. Hourglass has this Veil eyeshadow primer, and I gotta say it works really well for me. I use about the same amount I would as my Milani. The consistency is very similar to Milani or like an Urban Decay primer potion. I do feel like eye primer can be a very individual thing. There are some people who just only a certain type of eye primer application will do for them. If you have very oily lids, maybe you find that not just any eye primer is going to work for you, but for me, the Milani has always worked for me, and this one does too. That being said, because the Milani has always worked for me, I probably wouldn't actually buy this. This eye primer came to me in PR, and it's nice, and it is kind of like neutralizing to the lids, which is cool, but to me it's not an absolute essential. Now, Hourglass is a brand that really does not have a lot happening when it comes to eyeshadows, so we're gonna piece together a little look here. They do have a product called Scattered Light Glitter Eyeshadow, so we're gonna use some of that, and I'm gonna use my bronzer actually to give me a really pretty gentle crease. So I'm taking my Sigma E25 brush, I'm going into, you know, a little patch of this here that really does look like the deeper shade, you know, and I'll just take this to my crease to give me a little soft definition. No big deal, just very easy here. I just want a little contrast for that glitter shadow to work off of. And I would use the word glitter shadow pretty loosely. I mean, it's sparkly, but it's not like a real traditional chunky glitter. So there's the shadow in my crease. I'm now going to take a flat brush, and we're going to just apply some of that to the outer part of the lid as well. And if you have any of the different palettes, like the Unlocked palette that I mentioned that has, you know, some highlights, blushes, ambient lighting powders, whatnot, those could certainly put together an easy natural eye look for you if you wanted to. Finally, last way I'm going to use this is with a pencil brush going into that same shade, and we'll just give ourselves the softest, very softest definition here under the eye. Who knew this bronzer could be so useful? Okay, there we go. The shade in this Scattered Light glitter shadow that I'm going to be using, it does have a little stopper here. It reminds me a ton of the L'Oreal Infallible singles, you know? But the shade I'm using is Aura, and this is a little bit of a pinky color. And I like to kind of dab these on with my finger just because I feel like I get the fullest application. But I just kind of press it on and it just seems like a really like highly shimmery shadow. Do you see what I mean? How it's not like huge bits of glitter. To me, it's just like a very full-on shimmer. If you're into singles, okay, some of the shades, some of the different ones in this line, I think you probably could look to the L'Oreal Infallible singles and find a very similar texture and sort of finish experience here. I have not had the greatest all-day staying power with these. When I talk about the Vanish Primer and that it works well, like it works well with more traditional eyeshadows, but when I've tried these Scattered Light things, like they look really pretty at the onset, but they just don't stay with the fullest intensity all day. Now, Hourglass has a really nice mascara. It's in the gold kind of triangular packaging, right? And it's called Caution Extreme Lash. And I've used up one of those actually in a full size and a sample size. It's really good. It's thickening. It kind of reminds me of Superhero a little bit, but maybe not quite the curl holding for me of Superhero. Maybe a little more weight to it. So if you don't have an issue with curl holding and you just want something that's really going to thicken up your lash, that might be one that you would enjoy. I know Sephora has had it within different sampler packs before. It's a good mascara. I'm not trying to take anything away from it. I think we've got a lot of situations with this brand, for me, where there have been good products, but not necessarily something that I'm going to feel the need to constantly keep in my collection, you know, and that's one of those things. So I'm just going ahead and curling my lashes. This is going to be kind of a natural eye look with no liner, and I'm going to sub in my Mally Lift and Curl mascara. It's got a little bit of a curved brush, very dense amount of bristles, rubber bristles. Beautiful mascara there, is it not? Finally, we're going to talk a couple different products for lips here. They have the Unreal Lip Gloss, and this is the shade called Sublime. This, if you are looking for a gorgeous nude lip, I'm just going to throw this on here to show you. This is absolutely beautiful. I would say this is like 90% opaque, just the perfect tone of nude. If I were going for a glossy nude lip, this is just so beautiful. I like this little, like, kind of oval-shaped paddle style. It's got like a little bit of a minty scent to it, but not like a tingle to the lips as well or anything. But see what I mean about mostly opaque, but you can see just the tiniest bit of your lip color coming through that, and I just think that is such a pretty nude lip there. So if you are looking for a great, just a perfect nude gloss, I mean, this is something maybe I could look into a dupe for you guys, but that color is absolutely stunning. Now, they've also got a product called the Girl Lip Stylo, I think it's called. I've got several of these. I really do like this shade called Influencer. It's kind of a deep, toasty nude. Today, I'm going to use the shade called Activist. It's a little more pinky and rosy, and I thought it just might work with the top I have on today. These are really pretty products, very luxurious packaging. They are something that's going to twist up from the bottom, and they feel like a cream lipstick going on. Now, keep in mind, as time goes on, you're going to wear down that tip a little bit, and it's not going to be this nice kind of pointed formed tip that I have right now. In a lot of cases with products like that, it doesn't end up bothering me too much if I've chosen a light to medium shade. If it's getting too dark or too bright and I've got to be too precise with it, it will end up kind of frustrating you in the end that your tip has become so rounded. But they feel just like nice full coverage cream lipsticks, you know? There's maybe a little hint of shine coming off of it, but they're not overly glossy finish. They're not entirely matte either, although you could give it a blot and get there for sure. But I do like this natural kind of rosy pink shade, deeper pink with the color called Activist. And guys, this is my finished look now. I've got a baby fussing downstairs that I hear. He just wasn't going to be content downstairs. So can you sit with me? He says there's so many things I could hit off the table. Yes? So to me, the Vanish foundation, I think it works great. It's incredible coverage. It's really good staying power on me, normal to dry skin, keep that in mind. I moisturize well underneath this, and I feel like it's not too drying. That being said, I've been using a lot of BB creams and CC creams and lighter stuff lately, so to me this feels quite a bit heavier. Like, to look up close at my skin, I'm like, wow, I look more makeup-y. I don't look quite as fresh maybe at a glance. At the under eye, looking across the forehead, I just see a little more look of product. And when you're using fresher, lighter stuff, you just don't have as much of that. It's just kind of a fact of life with makeup. So I do like this product, but if you're wanting to achieve this level of coverage at a lower price, I would say look toward the Maybelline Superstay. As far as the concealer, it's a really good concealer, you guys. I do love it so much, but I do think we can get there coverage-wise with e.l.f. Camo Concealer, probably more toward the traditional camo than the hydrating. That's what I think is more like this one, is the regular. I feel bad because it's like those products came together and gave me like immaculate coverage on the skin, but I'd be lying if I said you couldn't actually go out and get good coverage at a lower price tag too. A couple of things that I'm really enjoying are actually the ambient lighting bronzer, the diffused bronze light. I just think this is gorgeous on the skin. I'm amazed at how nicely it contours. It gives just this perfect soft bronzer effect. I'm not being that careful. It just ends up looking really good. So I love that. And I'm really liking also the loose powder. There's something about this powder, whether you're looking to set your entire face or maybe target it on the under eye area, it really gives this little something extra coverage wise. If you're already into Laura Mercier and you're like, but do I need to make a whole additional purchase now? Maybe not, but it might be something to look into once you run out and you're like, what should I try next? It's a very like quality setting powder. Brow stuff is good, but not like completely knocking my socks off. I do love this as a nude gloss. I think that's very special. It's a very nice texture. It feels hydrating, but looks beautiful as well. These lip colors, absolutely luxe and high-end and really nice feeling in the hand, if you know what I mean. But that tip is gonna wear down, so be cautious of what shades you go to. And I'm not huge on the scattered light, not because it doesn't look pretty, because I do think it's pretty, but the staying power is not so great, and it's a look I think I could achieve with other things. So yeah, that's my story on Hourglass. I think they have some absolutely beautiful products, and I'm really happy with the overall look of the skin. I think they're a brand that really places their emphasis on the complexion products, and it shows. I mean, it looks really good. A little bit more than I might need for your average summer day. Probably, like I said, BB creams, CC creams are nice for me right now. And these days we can achieve high coverage at a lower price point, so just keep that in mind. But thank you guys so much for your time today. I hope this was informative for you, and I'd love to hear your feedback and your experiences with different Hourglass products in the comments section. And yep, he went for it. Okay, on that note, we'll see you later. Bye guys.